On my first night, I was told 3 things. Never enter room 13 after midnight. Never ask why the guest registry stops at 1987. And never, ever look at the security footage from that room. By sunrise, I'd broken all 3. The lone spur and squatted along Highway 77 like something that had crawled out of the Texas dirt and decided to stay. I pulled into the gravel lot just after sunset, my truck coughing its last breath before dying completely. $300 in my wallet, nowhere else to go, and a help wanted sign flickering in the window like a beacon for the desperate. I was all 3. The motel stretched in a long L shape. Doors painted a faded turquoise that might have looked cheerful in 1975. Now they just looked sick. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of red that makes you think of old crime scenes and darker things. Vacancy, it said, though I counted maybe 2 cars in the entire lot. The cicadas were screaming their heads off in the mesquite trees, and the air smelled like dust and something I couldn't quite place. Something sweet and wrong, like flowers left too long in a closed room. I pushed through the front door, triggering a bell that seemed too loud for the space. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect. Cracked linoleum, wood-paneled walls, a television playing static in a corner. Behind the desk sat a man who looked like he'd been assembled from spare parts of other old men. Liver spots, wire-frame glasses, suspenders holding up pants that had given up years ago. "You hear about the job?" His voice sounded like gravel in a tin can. "Depends on what it pays," I said, trying to sound like I had options. $12 an hour cash. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. All you do is sit here, answer the phone if it rings, check folks in if they show up. Easy work. He looked at me hard. "You good with being alone?" "I'm good with $12 an hour." He grunted, slid a clipboard across the desk. "Name's Harlan Petty. I manage this place. You fill that out. You start tonight." Simple as that. I should have known then that nothing about the Lone Spur and was simple. While I scribbled my information onto a form that looked older than I was, Harlan disappeared into the back office. He returned with a 3-ring binder, yellow with age, held together with duct tape, and what looked like genuine desperation. He dropped it on the desk with a thud that sent up a small cloud of dust. "Employee handbook," he said. "You read it, you follow it, you'll be fine." I flipped it open. The first page was typed on an actual typewriter, the letters slightly crooked, some punched harder than others. "Rules for night desk operation," it said. Below that, a list. "Always greet guests with welcome back, even if they're new." I laughed. "Is this a joke?" Harlan didn't smile. "Do I look like I'm joking?" I kept reading. "The front desk bell rings 3 times at 2:13 a.m. Don't answer it. Never turn off the neon vacancy sign. It's not for customers. If a guest pays in coins older than 1987, refuse the payment." "This is insane," I said. "What kind of place?" "The kind that pays cash and doesn't ask questions." Harlan leaned forward. "You want the job or not?" I thought about my dead truck, my empty bank account, the eviction notice folded in my back pocket. "I want the job." "Good. Then you follow the rules. Every single one. They're not suggestions, son. They're not superstition. They're the difference between walking out of here at dawn and—" He trailed off, looking at something over my shoulder. When I turned, there was nothing but the empty hallway leading to the rooms. "And what?" He shook his head. "Just follow the rules." Harlan spent the next hour showing me the ropes. How to work the ancient computer system that seemed to run on spite and prayer. Where the spare keys were kept on a pegboard behind the desk, each one labeled with a room number. I noticed they went from 1 to 12, then skipped to 14. When I asked about 13, Harlan's face went hard. "Room 13 is full," he said flatly. "Full of what?" "Full." He grabbed his jacket from a hook by the door. "I'm heading out. You sit here, you mind your business, you follow the handbook. Emergency number's on the desk. Don't call it unless someone's actively dying." "Wait," I said. "What about room 13? Why isn't there a key for it?" Harlan paused in the doorway. The neon sign cast red shadows across his face, making him look like something carved from raw meat. Because that room's been occupied since July 13th, 1987, and the guest never checked out. Don't knock on that door. Don't clean it. Don't even look at it if you can help it. You understand. Before I could answer, he was gone, his truck spitting gravel as it disappeared down the highway. I sat in the sudden silence, the handbook open in front of me. I kept reading. Don't clean room 13. Ever. If you hear shower water running in an empty room, do not open the door. Never check out a guest between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. Always refill room 7's ice bucket before sunset. If the lights flicker twice, someone's checking in who shouldn't exist. This was insane. All of it. But $12 an hour was $12 an hour, and I'd worked worse jobs for less money. I'd follow the stupid rules, collect my cash, and be gone by the end of the week. The first few hours were easy, boring even. I watched television with the volume low, flipped through the handbook again, laughed at some of the more ridiculous rules. Never let the night clerk's logbook drop below 13 entries. Don't leave the front desk unattended after 2:30 a.m. If the phone rings and no one is on the line, hang up and unplug it immediately. At midnight, I decided to stretch my legs. The motel was dead quiet, just the hum of the ice machine and the buzz of the neon sign. I walked down the hallway, checking the doors out of boredom more than anything else. Rooms 1 through 12, all dark, all empty. Then the hallway took a slight turn, and there it was. Room 13. The door was different from the others. Same faded turquoise paint, but something about it looked wrong. Older, maybe. The number was brass instead of plastic, tarnished almost black, and there was light coming from under the door. Not much, just a thin yellow line, but enough to know someone was inside. I stood there, staring at that sliver of light, and I swear to God I heard breathing from the other side. Slow, steady, like someone standing right against the door. Listening, I backed away, fast, and returned to the front desk. My hands were shaking as I poured coffee from the ancient pot Harlan had left. It tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the Reagan administration, bitter and thick, but I drank it anyway. At 1:47 a.m., the guest registry caught my eye. It was one of those massive leather-bound books, the kind hotels don't use anymore because computers exist. I flipped it open, curious. Page after page of names, dates, room numbers, all normal. Then I hit July 13th, 1987, and the entries just stopped. Not stopped like the book was full. Stopped like someone had drawn a line and said, "This is where it ends." Every page after that date was blank, completely blank, except for one entry, written in different ink, different handwriting. Room 13, E. Jenkins checked in. No checkout date. Just those words, and below them, in tiny, cramped letters, never left. I slammed the book shut, my heart hammering. This was getting weird, really weird. But I told myself it was just some local legend, some story they told to mess with new employees. Small towns did that kind of thing all the time. At 2:13 a.m., the front desk bell rang. 3 times. Ding, ding, ding. I stared at it. The handbook's words burned in my mind. The front desk bell rings 3 times at 2:13 a.m. Don't answer it. But there was no one at the desk. No one in the lobby. No one anywhere. The bell sat there on the counter, motionless, like it hadn't just rung by itself. I waited. 1 minute. 2. Nothing happened. Just the hum of the ice machine and the buzz of the neon sign and my own breathing, too loud in the silent lobby. At 2:45 a.m., curiosity got the better of me. The security monitors sat beneath the desk for small screens showing different angles of the motel. Parking lot, lobby, hallway, and room 13's interior. Wait, room 13's interior? I leaned closer. The 4th monitor showed the inside of a motel room. Old television, dresser, bed with a faded orange comforter. The camera angle was from the upper corner, looking down. The timestamp in the corner read July 13th, 87, 3 o'clock, flickering occasionally, the numbers jumping and resetting. And sitting on the bed, perfectly still, was a man. He wore a brown suit that looked like it came from a Sears catalog circa 1985. His hair was slicked back, his face pale in the grainy footage. He sat with his hands on his knees, staring directly at the camera, directly at me. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. I watched for 5 minutes, then 10. He never moved, never blinked, just sat there, watching the camera, watching me, his eyes black and empty in the low resolution. I tore my gaze away, my stomach churning. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. But I needed this job. I needed the money. I could handle weird. I could handle creepy. I just had to make it to sunrise. At 3 a.m. exactly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps, moving from the direction of room 13 toward the front desk. I froze, every muscle locked, as they got closer, closer. I could hear the slight scuff of leather on linoleum, the creak of old floorboards underweight. They stopped just around the corner, right at the edge of the lobby. I forced myself to look at the monitors. The hallway camera showed nothing. Empty corridor, doors all closed. But I could still hear breathing. That same slow, steady breathing I'd heard outside room 13. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. If the lights flicker twice, someone's checking in who shouldn't exist. I looked back at the monitors showing room 13. The man was gone. The bed was empty. The timestamp still read July 13th, 87, 3 o'clock, stuck in an endless loop. I looked back at the lobby camera. The man from room 13 was standing in the front lobby, 10 feet from the desk. He wore the same brown suit, the same slick back hair. His skin was the wrong color, gray like newspaper left in the rain. And he was staring at me with eyes that held nothing but darkness. His mouth moved. No sound came out, but I could read his lips. Welcome back. I ran. I didn't think, didn't plan, just bolted from behind the desk and out the front door into the parking lot. The neon sign buzzed overhead, that sick red glow washing everything in blood. I stood there in the Texas night, gasping, waiting for him to follow. He didn't. When I finally worked up the courage to look back through the window, the lobby was empty. But on the security monitor, I could see him. Back in room 13, sitting on the bed, hands on his knees, staring at the camera. Staring at me. The timestamp flickered. July 13th, 87, 3 o'clock. I had broken the first rule. I had looked at the security footage. And now something in room 13 knew I was here. I didn't go back inside until the sky started turning gray. Dawn felt like a pardon. Like whatever rules governed the Lone Spur Inn during the night loosened their grip when the sun came up. I found myself sitting in my truck, watching the lobby through the window, waiting for movement that never came. At 6:15 a.m., Harlan's truck pulled into the lot. He climbed out slowly, like a man who'd made this drive too many times, and stopped when he saw me sitting there. "You make it through," he called out. I wanted to tell him everything. The bell. The footsteps. The man in the brown suit standing in the lobby with his dead eyes and his gray skin. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way Harlan looked at me, with an expression that wasn't quite sympathy and wasn't quite resignation. Like he already knew. "Yeah," I said. "I made it." He nodded, unsurprised. "Good. Same time tonight." I drove to the nearest diner, ordered coffee I couldn't afford, and tried to make sense of what I'd seen. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe the security footage was old, looping footage that some previous employee had set up as a prank. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the desk and dreamed the whole thing. But I couldn't explain the footsteps. Couldn't explain the feeling of being watched, of something standing just around the corner, breathing in the darkness. I spent the day in my truck, sleeping in fits and starts, jerking awake every time I dreamed of that man sitting on the bed, staring. When evening came, I almost didn't go back. Almost drove away and let the job disappear in my rearview mirror. But $300 doesn't last long, and pride's an expensive thing to maintain when you're broke. So I showed up at 9:45 p.m., walked into the lobby, and found Harlan waiting with the handbook open on the desk. "You read rule number 14?" he asked without preamble. I hadn't. I flipped to it now. If you see someone you recognize in the motel after midnight, they're not who you think they are. Do not engage. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Harlan closed the handbook. "Because you're going to need it. Second night's always worse than the first. They know you now. They know you're curious." He grabbed his jacket. "Don't be curious. Curiosity is what gets you checked in." Checked in where? But he was already walking out the door. The evening started quiet. A couple checked into room 4 around 11, paying cash without meeting my eyes. An elderly woman took room 9, shuffling past the desk with a wheeled suitcase that squeaked like something dying. I greeted them both with "welcome back," just like the handbook said, and both times they nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. At 11:30 p.m., I decided to dig deeper. Behind the desk, stuffed in a drawer beneath old receipts and faded promotional flyers, I found more logbooks. Older ones. I pulled them out, blowing off dust, and started reading. The Lone Spur had opened in 1963. For 24 years, it operated like any other roadside motel. Guest names, check-in dates, check-out dates. Everything normal. Then I reached July 1987, and the entries got strange. July 12th, 1987. E. Jenkins, room 13. Checked in 11:47 p.m. July 13th, 1987. E. Jenkins reported smell of smoke. Fire department called 2:17 a.m. No fire found. July 13th, 1987. E. Jenkins complained about noise from adjoining rooms. All adjoining rooms vacant. July 13th, 1987. E. Jenkins request to check out. Denied per manager. That last entry made my skin crawl. Why would a checkout request be denied? I kept flipping pages, but that was it. No more entries about E. Jenkins. No checkout time. Nothing. Except for one thing. A newspaper clipping, yellowed and fragile, tucked between the pages. Tragic fire at Lone Spur Inn, 1 dead. The article was dated July 14th, 1987. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. A fire of unknown origin destroyed room 13 of the Lone Spur Inn early this morning, claiming the life of Edmund Jenkins, 47, a traveling salesman from Amarillo. Firefighters responding to the scene reported that the blaze appeared to have started inside the room, though Mr. Jenkins's door was found locked from the inside. The victim's body was discovered in the bed, though witnesses report seeing lights on in the room hours after the fire was extinguished. The motel's owner, Clayton Reeves, declined to comment. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. I sat back, my mind racing. Edmund Jenkins had died in room 13 in 1987, the same room 13 that showed up on the security monitor, trapped in an endless loop of July 13th, 87, 3 o'clock. The same room 13 that Harlan said had been occupied for decades. The same room where I'd seen a man sitting on the bed, staring at the camera. At midnight, the ice machine started humming. That wasn't unusual except for one thing. I could see it from the desk, and it wasn't plugged in. The cord lay on the floor, disconnected, but the machine kept running, kept humming, kept dumping ice into a bucket that never filled. At 12:47 a.m., the phone rang. I stared at it, remembering the rule. If the phone rings and no one is on the line, hang up and unplug it immediately. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Lone Spur Inn," I said. Silence. Not dead air, but the kind of silence that feels occupied, like someone listening. "Hello." I tried again. "You shouldn't be here after dark." The voice was male, flat, wrong, like someone speaking underwater or through layers of cloth. "You should leave before you check in." "Who is this?" "Room 13, the voice said, and the line went dead. I slammed the phone down and yanked the cord from the wall. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the plastic. This was insane. This was beyond insane. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. At 1:30 a.m., someone knocked on the front desk. I looked up. A woman stood there, maybe 60, wearing a floral dress that had gone out of style before I was born. She smiled at me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Evening," she said. "I'm looking for Earl Jenkins. Is he still in room 13? "Earl. E. Jenkins. Edmund Jenkins. I'm sorry," I managed. "I can't give out guest information." Her smile widened. "Oh, that's all right. I'll just go knock on his door. We're old friends. Earl and I. Haven't seen him since 1987. She turned toward the hallway. "Wait," I called out, but she was already walking away, her footsteps eerily silent on the linoleum. I watched her reach the corner where the hallway turned toward room 13, and then she was gone. I counted to 30, then 40, waiting for her to come back. She didn't. I checked the security monitors. The hallway was empty. Room 4 and room 9 showed sleeping occupants, and room 13 showed the man in the brown suit, still sitting on the bed, still staring at the camera. But now there was someone else in the frame. The woman in the floral dress, standing in the corner, facing the wall, not moving, just standing there. I ran to the hallway, my heart hammering. I had to see, had to know. I reached the corner, turned, and there was room 13's door. Light still showed underneath it. I could hear voices inside now, muffled, urgent. A man and a woman, arguing about something I couldn't make out. I pressed my ear to the door. "You have to let me go," the man was saying. That same underwater voice from the phone. "It's been too long. I want to check out." "You can't check out," the woman replied. "None of you can. This is where we're staying now. This is where we all stay. But there's someone new, someone who can take my place." I saw him on the camera. I saw him watching. My blood turned to ice. "He has to break the rules first," the woman said. "He has to choose to check in. You know how it works, Earl. You chose. I chose. We all chose." "I didn't choose," the man said, and his voice broke into something horrible, something that might have been a sob if it had come from something human. "I just wanted to sleep. I just wanted one night of sleep." I backed away from the door, my legs weak. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. But I could still hear them talking, their voices following me down the hallway. "He'll choose too," the woman said. "They always do. Curiosity kills more than cats." I made it back to the desk and grabbed the handbook with shaking hands. I flipped through it frantically, looking for something, anything that would explain this. Then I found it on the very last page, written in different ink, different handwriting. Rule 30. If you hear voices in room 13, you've already been added to the guest list. Your checkout date is pending. I slammed the book shut. No, I hadn't broken any rules. I'd listened to the door, sure, but I hadn't gone inside. I hadn't done anything wrong. At 2:13 a.m., the bell rang 3 times. I didn't look up, didn't acknowledge it, just sat there, staring at my hands, trying to control my breathing. At 2:45 a.m., I made the mistake of checking the security monitor again. The man in the brown suit was no longer sitting on the bed. He was standing directly in front of the camera, his face filling the screen. His eyes were black holes, his mouth open in a silent scream, his hands pressed against the lens like he was trying to push through it. And behind him, in the flickering light of room 13, I could see others, dozens of others, people in clothes from different eras, standing in a room that shouldn't be able to hold that many bodies, all of them staring at the camera, all of them staring at me. I looked at the lobby monitor. The man in the brown suit was standing in the front lobby again, 10 feet from the desk. But this time he wasn't alone. The woman in the floral dress stood beside him, and behind them, pressing in from the hallway, were the others. Silent figures in outdated clothes, their skin the color of old newspaper, their eyes empty and hungry. I didn't run this time. There was nowhere to run to. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I picked up the handbook and started reading the rules out loud, like an incantation, like a prayer. Always greet guests with welcome back, even if they're new. The front desk bell rings 3 times at 2:13 a.m. Don't answer it. Never turn off the neon vacancy sign. The figures stopped advancing. They stood there, watching me, listening. I kept reading. If a guest pays in coins older than 1987, refuse the payment. Don't clean room 13. Ever. If you hear shower water running in an empty room, do not open the door. One by one, they began to fade. Not disappear, just grow less solid, like smoke thinning in wind. The woman went first, then the others behind her. The man in the brown suit was the last to go. He stood there, his mouth moving, and I could just barely hear his words. You can't fight it forever. Eventually, everyone checks in. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the lobby with nothing but the hum of the ice machine and the buzz of the neon sign and my own ragged breathing. I sat at that desk until dawn, clutching the handbook like a Bible, reciting the rules over and over to keep them away. When Harlan arrived at 6:15 a.m., I was still there, still reading. He looked at me for a long moment. You're coming back tonight, he said. It wasn't a question. I wanted to say no. Wanted to throw the handbook at his feet and walk away and never look back. But I just nodded. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I could leave anymore. Didn't know if whatever lived in room 13 would let me. The man in the brown suit had said I'd been added to the guest list, and my checkout date was pending. I spent the day researching at the local library, a squat brick building that smelled like old carpet and older books. The librarian, a woman with the kind of face that suggested she'd heard every crazy story twice, helped me find the microfiche files for July 1987. The fire at the Lone Spur Inn had made the front page. I scrolled through the article again, looking for details I'd missed. Edmund Jenkins, traveling salesman. Locked door. Body found in bed. Witnesses reported seeing lights on after the fire was extinguished. That last part stuck with me. Lights on after the fire. How is that possible? I found a follow-up article from 2 weeks later. Fire investigation concludes. Questions remain. The fire marshal had ruled it accidental, likely caused by a cigarette, though Jenkins's wife insisted he didn't smoke. The article mentioned that the room had been rebuilt, that the motel reopened 3 months later. But there was something else, buried in the last paragraph. 3 previous night clerks have left their positions at the Lone Spur and since the incident, all citing personal reasons. Current owner Harlan Petty declined to comment on whether the fire has affected business. 3 night clerks in 2 weeks. I thought about the logbook I'd found, the one with all those names and the word checked in beside them. How many people had worked the night shift at the Lone Spur Inn? How many had seen what I'd seen? How many had never left? At 4 p.m., I drove to the county records office. The clerk, a bored man playing solitaire on his computer, pointed me toward the property records without looking up. I searched for the Lone Spur Inn and found the original building permits from 1963. The motel had been designed with 12 rooms. Just 12. No room 13. I asked to see the blueprints. The clerk sighed, disappeared into a back room, and returned 20 minutes later with a yellowed roll of paper. I spread it across the table, weighing down the corners with staplers and coffee mugs. There was, clear as day, the Lone Spur Inn. 12 rooms in an L shape. Rooms 1 through 6 along the bottom of the L. Rooms 7 through 12 along the side. No room 13. The space where room 13 should have been, where I'd walked to its door twice now, was marked as maintenance storage. But when I looked at the 1988 rebuilding permits, filed after the fire, something had changed. Someone had drawn a 13th room, squeezed between the maintenance storage and room 12. The addition was labeled in different handwriting, pressed so hard into the paper that it had nearly torn through. Room 13. Do not disturb. I took photos of everything with my phone, my hands shaking. This was proof. Proof that room 13 hadn't existed originally, that it had been added after the fire. But why? Why would you rebuild a room where someone had burned to death? Why would you mark it "Do Not Disturb" on official documents? I made it back to the motel at 9:30 p.m. Harlan was locking his truck, getting ready to leave. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or disappointment. "You're early," he said. "I need to know what happened in 1987. I showed him the photos on my phone. Room 13 didn't exist before the fire. So why does it exist now? Harlan looked at the images for a long time. Then he sat down on the curb, suddenly looking every one of his 70-some years. "You really want to know?" "Yes." He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "Clayton Reeves owned this place back then. My uncle. He called me the night of the fire, maybe 3 in the morning. Said something had gone wrong. Said he needed help. By the time I got here, the fire trucks were leaving. Room 13 was gone. Just a black hole in the side of the building, ash and twisted metal, and that smell. God, that smell." He took a long drag. But Clayton, he was standing in the parking lot, staring at where the room used to be. He kept saying, "He won't leave. He's still in there. He won't check out. Edmund Jenkins." Yeah, Earl. That's what he went by. Clayton had refused to let him check out earlier that day, see. Earl had tried to leave around noon, but Clayton said he couldn't. Said the bill hadn't been settled. I never understood what that meant, what kind of bill he was talking about. But Earl went back to his room, and that night, Harlan gestured vaguely at the motel. That night, the fire happened, and then Clayton rebuilt. That's what you do, right? You rebuild. But he didn't just repair the damage. He built room 13 back exactly as it was. Same layout, same furniture, same everything. Said it had to be done right. Said if he didn't build it back, Earl would never stop trying to get out. Harlan looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. 2 months later, Clayton checked into room 13, walked in at midnight, locked the door behind him. They found his body the next morning, sitting on the bed, stone dead. Heart attack, the coroner said. But his eyes were open, and he was staring at the door like he was waiting for someone. My mouth had gone dry, and the night clerks, every single one, eventually. Some lasted a week, some lasted months. But once you work here long enough, once you see what's in that room, once you hear them talking, he trailed off. You can't help it. You start to wonder what it's like in there. Start to think maybe it wouldn't be so bad. And then one night, you just walk down that hallway, and you open that door and you check in. That's insane. Yeah. Harlan stood up, grinding out his cigarette. Yeah, it is. But you're here, aren't you? You came back. That means you're already curious. Already wondering. Give a few more nights. You'll see. He walked his truck, then paused. The key to room 13 is in my office. Behind the desk, bottom drawer, under the carpet sample. I know you're going to look for it eventually. They all do. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't open that door before dawn. Whatever happens, wait until sunrise. That's the only rule that really matters. He climbed into his truck. Everything else is just delaying the inevitable. I watched his taillights disappear down Highway 77, then turned back to the motel. The neon vacancy sign buzzed overhead, that sick red light washing everything in crimson. I could see room 13's door from here, that thin line of yellow light underneath it. The first hour of my shift passed in tense silence. I sat at the desk, trying not to look at the security monitors, trying not to think about what Harlan had told me. But my eyes kept drifting to that bottom drawer, the one he'd mentioned, the one with the key. At midnight, the neon sign started flickering. Not the irregular flicker of a dying bulb, but a pattern. Long, short, short. Long, long, short. I watched it for 5 minutes before I realized what it was spelling out in Morse code. Check in. Over and over. Check in. Check in. Check in. I looked away, focusing on the handbook, reciting rules under my breath like a mantra. But the light kept flickering, kept spelling out its invitation, and I could feel myself weakening. At 1 a.m., I heard the shower turn on in room 7. According to the monitor, room 7 was empty. Had been empty all night, but I could hear the water running, could see steam seeping out from under the door into the hallway. The handbook was clear. If you hear shower water running in an empty room, do not open the door. I didn't, but I watched the monitor, watched that steam pour out, and I swear I saw shadows moving behind the frosted bathroom window. Shapes that looked almost human, pressing against the glass from the inside. The water ran for exactly 13 minutes, then stopped. The steam dissipated. The shadows were gone. At 2 a.m., I gave in and opened the bottom drawer. The key was exactly where Harlan said it would be, under a faded carpet sample that showed 3 different shades of brown. It was brass, tarnished almost black, with a plastic tag that read simply, 13. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight. It was cold, colder than any key should be, cold enough that it hurt to hold. I should have put it back, should have slammed that drawer shut and forgotten about it. Instead, I stood up and walked toward the hallway. Every step felt wrong, like walking against a current. Part of me was screaming to stop, to turn around, to run. But another part, a quieter part, was curious. What was really in that room? What would I see if I opened that door? I reached room 13. The yellow light still glowed underneath. I could hear something now, a sound I hadn't noticed before. Breathing. No, not breathing. Whispering. Dozens of voices, all whispering at once. Too low to make out individual words, but loud enough to know they were there. I raised the key to the lock. The whispering stopped. In a sudden silence, I heard one voice, clear and distinct. Edmund Jenkins, the man in the brown suit. Not yet. You have to want it. You have to choose. I lowered the key, my hand shaking. What was I doing? This was insane. I backed away from the door, back down the hallway, back to the desk. I threw the key into the drawer and slammed it shut, my heart racing. But I could still hear his voice in my head. You have to choose. At 2:13 a.m., the bell rang 3 times. At 3 a.m., I checked the security monitor one last time before dawn. Room 13 showed the same scene it always did. Edmund Jenkins sitting on the bed, staring at the camera. But now there were words written on the wall behind him. Words that hadn't been there before. Written in something dark, something that dripped down the wallpaper like paint or blood or worse. Welcome back. I sat at that desk until sunrise, watching the sky turn from black to gray to pink. When Harlan arrived, I was still staring at the monitor, at those 2 words dripping down the wall. You okay? He asked. I want to tell him about the key, about almost opening the door. But I just shook my head. How do we stop it? How do we make it end? Harlan looked at me sadly. We don't. This is the Lone Spur Inn. This is what it does. This is what it's always done. He paused. The only question is how long you can resist before you check in. I drove away as the sun rose over the Texas plains, watching the motel shrink in my rearview mirror. But I knew I'd be back that night. I always came back, because Edmund Jenkins was right. Eventually, I would have to choose. Eventually, curiosity would win. Eventually, I would take that key, open that door, and step into room 13. Eventually, I would check in. And once you check into room 13, you never, ever check out. I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words dripping down the wall. Welcome back. Like I was expected. Like I'd been there before. I spent the afternoon driving aimlessly through the Texas heat, windows down, radio off, trying to think of anywhere else I could go. But my truck was running on fumes, my wallet was empty, and every road seemed to curve back toward Highway 77, back toward the Lone Spur Inn. At 7 p.m., I found myself parked at a gas station 20 miles from the motel, staring at my phone. I could call someone, could ask for help, for money, for a place to stay. But who? I'd burned those bridges months ago. and the few people who might have cared had stopped answering my calls. I was alone, completely alone, except for the people in room 13 who were waiting for me. I bought a coffee I didn't drink and a sandwich I didn't eat, and at 9:45 p.m., I drove back to the motel. Harlan was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his truck. When he saw me pull in, he didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "Fourth night," he said. "That's when it really starts." When what starts? When they start showing you the truth. He handed me the handbook. "Stay behind the desk. Don't go into the hallway. Don't look at the monitors if you can help it. And for God's sake, don't open that drawer. What if I just don't come back tomorrow?" Harlan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you have a choice? You've been marked, son. You've seen them. You've heard them. You've touched the key." He climbed into his truck. "They own you now. The only question is when you give in." He drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot under that blood-red neon sign. The first 3 hours were quiet. Too quiet. No guests checked in. No phone calls. No sounds except the hum of the ice machine and the buzz of the sign. I sat at the desk, trying to focus on anything but the hallway, anything but room 13. At midnight, the television in the lobby turned on by itself. It showed static at first, that gray-white noise that sounds like the ocean or screaming. Then the static resolved into an image. A news broadcast, grainy and washed out, the colors wrong. "This is Channel 8 News, reporting live from the Lone Spur and where a fire has claimed one life." The reporter was young, her hair feathered in that distinctly 1980s way. Behind her, I could see the motel, smoke pouring from one of the rooms. Edmund Jenkins, 47, was found dead in room 13 after an apparent electrical fire. Authorities say the door was locked from the inside. The camera panned across the scene. Firefighters, police, onlookers, and standing in the background, watching the burning room with an expression of absolute horror, was Clayton Reeves, Harlan's uncle, the original owner. The broadcast continued. Witnesses report hearing screaming from inside the room, but firefighters say Jenkins was already dead when they arrived. The cause of death has not been officially determined, but sources close to the investigation suggest the screen went black. It flickered back on, showing a different angle. This one was from inside room 13, looking out at the door. The camera was shaking, and I could hear breathing, panicked and fast. "Let me out," a man's voice pleaded. "Edmund Jenkins, please let me out. I'll pay whatever you want. I'll do whatever you say. Just let me check out." The doorknob rattled. "Locked." He was locked in. "You can't leave," another voice said. This one was deeper, older. "Clayton Reeves, the debt hasn't been paid. Not until you settle what you owe. I don't owe you anything. I just want a place to sleep. Everyone owes something. Everyone pays eventually." Smoke began seeping under the door. Jenkins started coughing, then screaming. "Help! Fire! Someone help me!" But no one came. The smoke got thicker. Jenkins collapsed to the floor, his hand reaching toward the camera, toward me. His eyes met mine through 38 years of time. "Don't come here," he gasped. "Don't work here. Don't ever." The screen went black. I sat there, shaking, staring at the empty television. That was what had happened. Clayton Reeves had locked Edmund Jenkins in that room and let him burn. But why? What debt? What payment? At 1 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets of footsteps, shuffling and slow. I looked at the monitor. The hallway was full of them. The woman in the floral dress. An old man in coveralls. A young girl in a prom dress from the 1970s. A businessman in a leisure suit. Dozens of people, all walking slowly toward the front desk. They stopped at the corner, just out of sight from the lobby. I could hear them breathing, all of them, their breath synchronizing into one terrible rhythm. Then they spoke, all at once, their voices layering over each other. We were night clerks. We were guests. We were curious. We were desperate. We all chose. We all checked in. And now we wait. We wait for someone to take our place. We wait for someone to open the door. We wait for you. I grabbed the handbook and started reading the rules out loud again, but this time it didn't work. This time they kept talking, kept advancing. I could see them in the monitor now, rounding the corner into the lobby. Their gray skin, their empty eyes, their mouths moving in unison. Come see what waits in room 13. I ran, not outside this time, but toward the back office, slamming the door behind me. I could hear them in the lobby, could hear them pressing against the office door, their fingers scraping against the wood. The office was small, cramped, filled with filing cabinets and old motel equipment. I backed against the far wall, looking for another exit, and that's when I saw it. A door. An old wooden door with a brass number tarnished almost black. But that was impossible. Room 13 was in the hallway, on the other side of the building. It couldn't be here. Couldn't be everywhere. Except it could, because room 13 wasn't a place. It was a state, a condition, a trap that existed in every shadow, every corner, every locked door in the Lone Spur Inn. The doorknob turned by itself. The door swung open. Inside, the air was freezing. I could see my breath misting in the sudden cold. The room looked exactly like it had on the security monitor. Old television, dresser, bed with faded orange comforter. But now I could see the details the camera couldn't capture. The cigarette burns on the nightstand, the water stains on the ceiling, the smell of smoke and decay, and something worse, something that had been rotting here for 38 years. And sitting on the desk, illuminated by a single lamp, was a guest book, not the one from the front desk. This one was older, leather-bound, with pages so brittle they looked like they might crumble at a touch. I walked toward it without meaning to, my feet carrying me forward against my will. I opened it. Every page was filled with names. Night clerks who'd worked at the Lone Spur Inn. I recognized some from my research. Thomas Whitley, 1988. Checked in. Diane Ruiz, 1991. Checked in. Marcus Odom, 2003. Checked in. Page after page of names, dates, and that same notation. Checked in. I flipped to the last page with writing. The ink was still wet. The name written there was mine. My full name, my date of birth, everything. And next to it, in that same cramped handwriting, arrival date, November 6th, 2025. Checkout date, pending. Today's date. I'd arrived today. No, that wasn't right. I've been working here for 4 nights. 4 nights of hell, of terror, of barely holding on. But the guest book said I just arrived. Said I was just checking in. I looked around the room again, really looked at it. The details were wrong. The television showed a reflection, but I wasn't in it. The mirror on the wall reflected the room, but the room in the reflection was different, cleaner, newer, and sitting on the bed in the reflection was me. Not me now. Me from 4 nights ago, when I'd first walked into the Lone Spur Inn with $300 and nowhere else to go. Me before I'd known about Room 13, before I'd seen Edmund Jenkins, before any of this had started. The me in the reflection looked at the mirror, looked at me, and mouthed 2 words. You chose. I stumbled backward, away from the desk, away from the guest book with my name in it. My hand touched the wall and came away wet. Not with water, with something black and thick like tar, like smoke made solid. It was dripping down the walls, pooling on the floor, and in the black surface I could see faces. All the night clerks, all the guests, everyone who'd ever checked into room 13, trapped in the walls, in the floor, in the very structure of the building. Edmund Jenkins's face surfaced in the tar near my feet. You can't leave, he said, his voice bubbling up through the blackness. None of us can. We're all part of it now. Part of the room. Part of the debt. What debt? I screamed. What are you talking about? The original debt. The first death. The reason this place exists. His face sank back into the tar, replaced by another. Clayton Reeves, the original owner. I built this place on cursed ground. Indian burial site, they said. I didn't care. Built it anyway. And on opening night, someone died in room 13. Heart attack. Natural causes, they said. But the land demanded payment. Demanded a life for every life. So I made a deal. Keep room 13 full. Keep feeding its souls. And the motel stays open. The business stays good. The debt stays paid. Another face rose. The woman in the floral dress. We all checked in willingly. We all broke the rules. We all gave in to curiosity. And now we're here. Forever. The tar was rising, climbing up the walls, reaching for me. I tried to run for the door, but it wouldn't open. Locked. Just like Edmund Jenkins had been locked in on the night of the fire. The telephone on the nightstand rang. I picked it up, because what else could I do? Hello. I whispered. You have a choice. It was Harlan's voice. You can stay in there, become part of the room, join all the others. Or you could do what I did. What did you do? I feed it. I bring it fresh souls. Every night clerk, every desperate person who needs a job. I bring them here. I give them the handbook. I watch them break the rules. And when they check in, the debt is paid for another cycle. That's why I'm still alive. That's why I can leave. His voice dropped to a whisper. You could do it too. You could be the manager. All you have to do is make sure someone else checks in. I looked at the guest book and my name written in wet ink. And if I refuse, then you stay. Forever. The tar had reached my ankles, cold and thick. I could feel it pulling at me, dragging me down into the floor where all the others waited. In the television screen, I could see myself sinking. In the mirror, I could see myself sitting calmly on the bed like I'd been there for years. I had one chance, one choice. I looked at the guest book, at the pen sitting beside it, at the blank space under my name where checked in hadn't been written yet. My hand moved toward the pen. The tar pulled harder. In the television, my reflection opened its mouth and screamed. I grabbed the pen and wrote 2 words next to my name. Checked out. The room exploded, not with fire or force, but with light. Brilliant, burning light that seared away the tar, that shattered the television and cracked the mirror. I heard screaming, dozens of voices crying out in rage and despair. The walls peeled back like skin, revealing the bones of the building beneath, and for just a moment I saw them all. Every soul trapped in room 13, reaching for me, begging me to stay, to join them, to be part of the debt. Then I was falling, tumbling through darkness, and I hit the floor of the front office hard enough to knock the wind from my lungs. I gasped for air, looking around wildly. The office was normal, just filing cabinets and old equipment. No door to room 13, no tar, no guest book, but my hand was still gripping the pen, and when I looked down, my palm was covered in that black substance, cold and wet. I stumbled out of the office into the lobby. Dawn was breaking outside, pink lights streaming through the windows. The security monitors showed empty rooms, empty hallways. Room 13 screen was black. I ran to the hallway, to where room 13's door should be. It was gone, just blank wall, freshly painted, like it had never existed. I stood there, shaking, until Harlan's truck pulled into the lot. He walked into the lobby, took one look at me, and went pale. You got out, he whispered. You actually got out. What happened? You broke the cycle. You checked yourself out. I've never seen anyone do that before. He looked at me with something like fear. But it won't last. Room 13 always comes back. Always finds a way. You might have escaped tonight, but what? He pointed at the guest registry on the desk. I walked over slowly, dreading what I'd find. The book was open to today's date. And there, in that same cramped handwriting, was a new entry. Room 13 occupied. Guest, TBA checkout date, never. Below that, in fresher ink, new manager required. Candidate, pending. I looked at Harlan. I'm not doing it. I'm not feeding it more people. Then it'll take you. Eventually. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But room 13 is patient. And you've got its attention now. You escaped once. It won't let you escape twice. I walked out of the Lone Spur Inn and got in my truck. This time, I didn't look back. But as I drove away, I could see in my rearview mirror the neon sign flickering in the dawn light. And where it should have read vacancy, it now spelled something else. Welcome back. I drove for 3 days straight, stopping only for gas and coffee, putting as many miles between myself and the Lone Spur Inn as my dying truck would allow. I made it to Oklahoma before the engine finally gave out, leaving me stranded in a town so small it didn't even have a traffic light. I found work at a diner, sleeping in a room above the kitchen, trying to forget, trying to convince myself it was over. But every night at 2:13 a.m., I would wake up to the sound of a bell ringing 3 times. Every television I passed showed static that resolved into room 13. Every motel I saw made my hand shake, and every mirror showed the same thing. Me, sitting on that bed with the faded orange comforter, waiting. After 2 weeks, I stopped fighting it. I got in my truck, which started on the first try despite having died weeks ago, and I drove back to Highway 77. The Lone Spur Inn looked exactly the same. Same buzzing neon sign, same faded turquoise doors, same feeling of wrongness that permeated everything. Harlan was sitting in the parking lot, like he'd been waiting for me. I knew you'd come back, he said. They always do. I can't stay away. Every time I close my eyes, I'm there, in that room. I can feel the tar on my skin. I can hear them whispering. I looked at him desperately. How do I make it stop? You can't. You wrote checked out, but you never really left. Part of you is still in there, will always be in there. The only way to be free is to give it what it wants. Another soul. He nodded. Someone has to check in. Someone always has to check in. That's the rule. That's the debt. I thought about it for a long time, sitting in that parking lot under the blood-red glow of the neon sign. I thought about Edmund Jenkins, trapped for 38 years. I thought about all the night clerks, all the guests, all the desperate people who checked in a room 13 and never left. I thought about who I had been before this place and who I was now. No, I said finally, I won't do it. I won't bring someone else here. There has to be another way. Harlan's expression hardened. There is no other way. This place has existed for 60 years because we feed it. If you stop, if you refuse, then it takes you instead. And not just you. It starts spreading. More rooms. More traps. Until the entire motel is room 13. Until everyone who drives past gets pulled in. Is that what you want? I want to end. It doesn't end. It never ends. That's the point. I got out of the truck and walked toward the motel. Harlan called after me, but I didn't stop. I walked through the lobby, past the front desk with its yellowed handbook and ancient guest registry, down the hallway, past the rooms with their faded numbers. And there it was, room 13. The door had reappeared, brass number tarnished black, that thin line of yellow light underneath. I could hear them inside, all of them, whisper my name. I pulled out the key. I kept it, though I didn't remember taking it. It was in my pocket, ice cold, waiting. I put the key in the lock. Don't, Harlan said from behind me. If you go in there willingly, you can never leave. Ever. Is that what you want? No, I said, but I won't damn someone else to save myself. I turned the key. The lock clicked. The whispering stopped. I opened the door. The room was exactly as I remembered. Same orange comforter, same cigarette burns, same smell of smoke and decay. But it was empty. No Edmund Jenkins. No woman in the floral dress. No faces in the tar. Just an empty room with a bed and a desk and a telephone that started ringing the moment I stepped inside. I picked it up. Hello, I said. Thank you. It was Edmund Jenkins's voice, but different now. Clearer. More human. Thank you for choosing. Thank you for ending it. Ending what? The cycle. Someone had to choose to check in without being tricked, without being manipulated, without breaking the rules. Someone had to willingly accept the debt. You paused. You freed us. All of us. We could finally check out. I looked around the room. It was changing. The walls were brightening, the smell fading, the sense of wrongness lifting like morning fog. In a mirror, I could see them leaving. All the trapped souls, walking towards some light I couldn't see. Finally free after decades. But what about me? I asked. You took our place. That's the price. That's the debt. But you chose it. That makes all the difference. The line went dead. I sat down on the bed, feeling the weight of what I'd done. I was trapped now. Trapped in room 13 for eternity. Sitting in this room while the years passed outside. But at least I'd done it on my own terms. At least I'd saved all those others. At least it was my choice. Days passed, or maybe years. Time moved strangely in room 13. I sat on that bed, waiting, watching the door, wondering if anyone would ever open it. Then one day, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened, and a man walked in. Young, desperate looking, with the kind of eyes that said he'd run out of options. He looked around the room, then at me. Is this room 13? He asked. I opened my mouth to warn him, to tell him to run, to never look back. But different words came out. Words I didn't choose. Words that came from something deeper, something that lived in the walls and the floor and the very air of the Lone Spur Inn. Welcome back, I heard myself say. He smiled, relieved. Thank God. I've been driving for hours, and every other place was full. This is the last room, right? Yes, I said. This is the last room. He set down his bag and sat on the bed next to me, though he didn't seem to see me. Couldn't see me. To him, I was just another shadow, another piece of furniture in an old motel room. I just need one night, he said, lying back on the bed. Just one night to rest, and then I'll be on my way. I watched him close his eyes, watched him sink into sleep, watched the room begin to change around him, the walls darkening, the smell returning, the tar beginning to seep through the cracks. And I understood then what I'd really done, what checking in really meant. I hadn't ended the cycle. I'd become part of it. I was room 13 now. I was the trap, the debt, the hunger that waited in the darkness for desperate souls. The man would wake up in a few hours, and he'd find he couldn't leave. The door would be locked. The walls would be dripping, and he'd hear my voice whispering the truth. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And when he finally gave in, when he finally accepted his fate, when he finally sat down on that bed and stopped struggling, I'd be able to move on, pass the burden to him, walk out that door and never look back. That's how it worked. That's how it had always worked. One soul checks in, one soul checks out. The debt is always paid. I looked at the sleeping man and felt something close to pity, but not enough to stop what was coming. Not enough to fight against the thing I'd become. Because I wanted out. Wanted it so badly I could taste it. And if that meant damning someone else, then so be it. I made my choice when I opened that door. Now he made his. The next morning, Harlan found the front desk abandoned. Nothing unusual about that anymore. He'd seen it dozens of times over the years. Another night clerk gone, another room occupied. He looked at the guest registry, already knowing what he'd find. Room 13D. Winters, checked in, November 25th, 2025. Checkout date, pending. Below that, in different handwriting, night clerk position available. Inquire within. Harlan sighed and went to change the help wanted sign in the window. Someone would come. Someone always came. Someone desperate enough, broke enough, lost enough to take a job at a roadside motel in the middle of nowhere. And the cycle would continue. Because that's what the Lone Spur Inn did. That's what it had always done. It took the desperate, the lost, the curious. It broke them down, showed them the truth, and gave them a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Check in, or check someone else in. Become the victim, or become the trap. Stay forever, or feed it more souls. As Harlan walked to his truck, he glanced at room 13. The door was closed. The light was off. But he could hear them in there, whispering to each other in the darkness. The old ones teaching the new ones. The cycle perpetuating itself. He'd been manager for 40 years now. 40 years of bringing in new night clerks, of watching them succumb to curiosity, of seeing them either check in or become recruiters themselves. He was tired. So tired. Maybe it was time for him to take a rest. Maybe it was time to walk down that hallway one last time and knock on that door. Maybe it was time to check in. But not today. Today, he had a help wanted sign to post. Today, he had a job to fill. Tomorrow, though, tomorrow he'd think about it. He always thought about it tomorrow. And tomorrow never came. If you ever find yourself driving down Highway 77 in Texas, past mile marker 213, you might see a motel. The Lone Spur Inn, with its faded turquoise doors and buzzing neon sign. You might think about stopping, about resting for the night, about taking advantage of their surprisingly low rates. Don't, because some rooms are open for guests, and others are open for something else. Room 13 doesn't check out. It never has. And if you're not careful, neither will you.